Hey everybody,
Hey,
welcome back.
welcome back to
Transparent with the Townsends.
We missed you guys. It's been a while since we did like an official video.
Yep,
We've been doing our lives.
Yeah, I was just about to say that. We've been doing a lot of lives.
Yeah.
But we're getting back into series stuff.
We're trying to be more consistent. So
Consistency is key.
We'll see how this goes. Yeah. What are we talking about today?
Mental health.
Yes.
Illness. And faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I know it probably sounds like the three of those things would not coincide together, but
they do.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that today. Today, guys, I'm going to be getting into my story dealing with depression. And so I guess to start with, so I was in a relationship previous to you, obviously, where the girl I was with at the time, I had put a lot of my energy and time in my thought process as far as like my identity into that relationship. And so I looked at kind of myself as like that was a heavy part of like that relationship is like heavy to me. I was like, oh, I'm gonna get married to this girl.
How old were you?
So we first started dating when I was like 16.
Oh.
No. Well, we went to prom together, I think. So it was like 16 or 17. And then we were together about into my sophomore year of college.
So a serious, kind of serious relationship.
Yeah, kind of serious. You were
adults.
We were adults
for some of that.
Yep. And we had been in a long distance relationship for about a year and a half. I came back to Charleston from Florida State to kind of negate all that aspects of things because.
Sorry, I have to hate Florida State on principle, so that's all. Continue.
Okay, you almost went there.
Exactly. Continue.
Anyways, Florida State healer. Came back and we were together for a little minute, and then I think one of the biggest things that kind of deteriorated that relationship was the fact like I was very much like we're not gonna have sex until marriage, and she was with me for a while until like she got to a point I guess where when she went to college like the viewpoints and different things she saw from other people affected her mindset on sex until she wanted to have sex before marriage, and I had allowed worldly logic to allow me to fall into the aspect of believing that if I have sex with her, it would save our relationship. I was already going to marry her anyway and stuff like that. And so we ended up having sex. And in the midst of that time frame of me having sex with her, I dealt with a lot of like emotional abuse, kind of mental abuse during that time frame.
From her?
Yeah. A little physical, not a lot, but like some hitting, stuff like that. But most of it was just kind of like talking down to me as far as like, I couldn't satisfy her. I'm not a man. I don't know what a man is. And then like her sleeping with another dude while I was sleeping with her, and then talking about like how he could do a whole lot better job, like taking care of her than I could sexually and stuff like that. And then of course, like her sleeping with another girl, and at the same time as like I was sleeping with her, and then it's like, oh, she satisfies me better than you and this other dudes. And it's like questioning, it's like, okay, cool, what does it really mean to be a man? Like as a man, I can't really do the things I'm supposed to do as a man. And so there's a whole lot more in there too. I feel like I've forgotten some of that too. Like kind of, I repressed a lot of that and moved on. And so outside, like after that relationship fully ended, we fully broke off. Like we broke up together in relationship wise. We broke up like not talking to each other, not seeing each other, and like so I fell into depression. And so that depression lasted about 5 years. And during that time frame, I was very much to me now looking back on it, it's kind of like a blank space. I don't really remember a lot that happened during that time frame. I do know that I felt like very numb, very alone, I was very unmotivated. Like my days kind of look like I wake up in the morning, I eat. I think I only ate really because my mother made me eat. And so during that time frame, I worked with my parents fully. And so I really kind of went to work with her to the office, and then like I ate lunch with her because she ate lunch, and then like wherever she went, I went with her, and then like we went home.
Wow.
And then like I ate dinner, and I went back to my room, which is my dark room. I did not turn the lights on during that time frame, I think. And then I just kind of looked at the ceiling until I went to sleep. And I don't remember. I didn't really watch TV. I didn't play video games. And I was an avid gamer during that time frame before. But I kind of didn't play video games. I didn't read books. If anyone knows me, they know I'm an avid book reader. I love books and stories, and so I didn't read stories. I didn't watch.
So what, were you just in your head a lot?
I was in my head a lot. Yeah, I think I was just kind of like. So I guess to preface it, like I've dealt with depression before because I had gone through like a moment of suicide where I tried to almost kill myself for a straight year. I tried to kill myself. Glory be to God that it didn't happen. Every suicide attempt I tried to do failed. But so for me, I had already like gone through depression before, and so it's kind of like this is more. It's like systematic in a sense. Like it was kind of like I'm just going through. I was robotic.
Yeah.
And so in the midst of that, very unmotivated, very numb, very isolated, very alone. I felt alone. I felt like I wasn't. It reminded me of like back then. I felt like I was unworthy to be alive because of actions that I've done. This is more like I didn't feel there's a point to living if I didn't like feel accomplished as a person. Like I didn't feel like the things I did accomplished anything. It's kind of like what did the years I've spent into this mean anything? Especially if like if I don't know what it means to be a man, if I don't know what it means to who am I, like major questionings of like my identity, major questionings of who I am, major questionings of like what am I doing here?
Did you feel like kind of like you had failed?
I did feel like I failed, but I also felt like I didn't really understand like people. I very much just like because I felt very much I felt hurt, and then I felt like numb from the hurt. It's kind of like I was so hurt that I was just kind of like to escape the hurt. I went back to that depressed state because I was just like I don't understand people. Like I don't understand why somebody could do something like that to me. And so for me, it was just very much just kind of like kind of weird that the depression became I went to it like a safe space.
Not that weird. I think sometimes it can feel safe because you just experienced a huge hurt that if you stay isolated and you stay in your safe space, technically, then,
safe bubble.
Yeah, then you're safe. You don't have to branch out. You don't have to.
It's very false safety. Yeah,
you can kind of like define what your day is going to be. You know, like you don't have to go outside of your comfort zone and do things that might. You don't have to put yourself out there,
right,
and do things that might hurt you again. Right. So I think it is in a way creating security, like a security blanket for yourself.
Most definitely. Most definitely.
You said that lasted for how long?
5 years.
Very long time.
It is a very long time.
It's a long time to feel that way, I think. You know, it's a long time to be depressed. And I almost want to know, because I've dealt with depression as well, but I don't think it lasted for that long. So I almost want to ask you, like, what really made you keep going? And what made you, and this is going to, I guess, maybe sound bad, or maybe it won't, but you said that you had already considered suicide earlier on in your life. So what made you not resort back to that suicidal thinking?
So I think because I'd already tried to commit suicide before and it failed, and I had come to, at the end of that, I give my life to Jesus. And so I kind of come to terms a little bit with things I'd done in the past. So in my head, I was like, well, suicide is not right from biblical standards. So I was like, well, I'm not going to commit suicide because it's not right. And so there was that standpoint, but also I think I was also a coward to the point where like I didn't.
You were too afraid to do it?
I was too afraid to try to kill myself.
I wouldn't say you were a coward.
Well, no, I won't say I was a coward. I think I was. I didn't want to go through that. So it's kind of one of those things. Like I tried it before, it didn't work, and I'm not saying I was a coward, but I think I was more like I understood a little bit more. Like trying to do that wasn't going to help me because like the feeling was still there, and like that was it. Like, is that kind of an escape? It possibly could have been an escape for me, like because I would stop existing. But like it wouldn't have changed the fact that I wouldn't have achieved like rest in a sense from that. If that makes sense.
I have to ask because I think as Christians there is this kind of, and I guess it's a wide conversation because there are people who think if you commit suicide, you already condemn yourself to hell. There are people who don't think that.
Yes.
So I just want to say, like, was that any?
Yeah, that was in my mind. I hate to kind of voice it that way because I know it's very controversial.
What's your opinion?
It is my opinion.
So what's your opinion?
My opinion is that I've had the conversations with a few people about this, and they have certain viewpoints on it, and I've kind of come to a mixed viewpoint. At that time, because we're talking about how I felt at that time. At that time, I definitely felt like if I committed suicide, I was condemning myself to hell.
Mm.
and I didn't want that. How I feel now is kind of mixed about it. I had a conversation with somebody, and they were very much just like, well, at the end of the day, like, the Lord judges how he judges.
Yeah,
Like, who's to say
absolutely.
how he judges in that standpoint?
We don't know.
And especially if someone is dealing with like a mental issue that triggers them to actually make a decision, were they in their right mind when they made that decision?
Yeah.
And so it's kind of one of those things like, how does he judge that? And so I kind of left it alone and leave it in the Lord's hand as far as like how he judges that. I'm not going to speak or judge on that because I don't have no right to. So at that time, though, that's how I felt about it, and that swayed my decision. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that. So what that looked like was I was very unmotivated about my life and alone. So I placed myself in situations where I possibly could have died, but it wouldn't have been by my own actions.
It's almost like you didn't want to die, but you didn't want to live.
Yeah, I didn't want to live,
and so that's why
I just existed.
Yeah.
And the reason why I said like I put myself in a position where I could have died, I think because some of it was like me realizing, but I didn't realize until I was in the actual incident. Because it ended up being a moment where I was talking to this girl, and like I was being dumb. And I realize this now. At the time, I didn't understand it, and I think I was trying to find some type of escape from the pain I was in. Like, we met online, we were talking. She asked me to send her money. I sent her money and some other stuff, and then she wanted to meet. And then this is after like maybe weeks of me sending her money.
Wow.
Stupid. But anyway, so she wanted to meet, and so she sent me this address, and I end up at this address, and I pull up, and it's about 7, 8 o'clock at night, and it's like I realized looking at it, I didn't realize this till I woke up, like the Holy Spirit woke me up to see it. It was a trap house. I pulled up outside the trap house, and it was in the hood, in North Charleston, and I texted, said I was there, and they didn't respond, and I debated if I should walk in there, and I remember clearly hearing from the Spirit, what are you doing here? Like, why are you here? And so it was in that moment I kind of woke up and I was like, what am I doing here? What am I doing? What is this moment in my life? I think that was the beginning point of me actually starting to wake up from my depression, because it was in that moment, that was the first stepping stone for me waking up, because I ended up going home after that. The second moment, I think, where I started to wake up from the depression was I saw in the news, he talked about this dude who was walking in the park, and he went to meet this girl in the park, and then he got mugged. Like, they were trying to rob him, and so he ended up dying. And so what happened was there was this girl and these couple guys, and so they were running this game where they would get guys, and then she would act like she was in a relationship. They would send her money, and then she would ask to meet, and then they would rob them. And so it went wrong somehow, where they ended up killing the dude. But I was like, that could have been me.
Yeah.
It might have even been the same group. And so for me, I was just like, okay, it's a wake up call. Like, oh, like I could have died.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like you put yourself in a situation where like you didn't want to live, and like you're existing, and you could have died because you didn't care enough about your life. Like, you're throwing your life away.
Yeah.
But do you really want to die? And I was like, I think at that time I realized I don't want to die. And so
that's good.
That was like the beginning point, like God using moments of providence to save my life, but not just save my life, but to help wake me up from existing, but wanting to live again. And I think the third thing that kind of
hold on before you go on. I'm sorry, I don't want
to
hold that thought, because something about what you said made me think of Elijah and the cave moment.
It was very much like Elijah. It was very much like Elijah.
He says, Elijah, what are you doing here?
Ooh.
And Elijah was also suicidal.
I can actually parallel my life a little bit to Elijah as you're talking about it, because Elijah was afraid for his life and desired no longer to live anymore because of the words and actions of a woman.
Oh, snap. Yeah.
And I had stopped wanting to walk out the mission and the purpose God had in my life, and wanting to live, and doubting my identity and who I was, and just wanting to throw it all away because of the words and actions of a woman.
Interesting.
And I didn't want to commit suicide. He didn't want to commit suicide. He asked God for taking life. I wanted to just let God take my life, kind of situation.
Yeah.
And so very much similar. And God placed people. He placed an angel there for Elijah to feed him and to bring him water and to tend him and all that stuff like that. God placed in my life my mother, to be there to make sure I was fed and to tend to me, make sure that I didn't, starve myself to death. So
I don't want to interrupt you again, but I think I remember you saying something about how your parents, just in conversations between us about this, something about how your mom said that she knew she shouldn't leave you alone at that time of your life.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, I think it's 2 times. I think, when I told them about the time I tried to commit suicide, she said she knew not to leave me alone during that time frame. Which that's part of the reason I think why some of the stuff I tried to do failed, just because them being in the midst of all that, and it just complicated a whole bunch of stuff I tried to do. And then like, I think she also knew not to leave me alone during this time frame because she was constantly there. Making me get up, making me eat, making sure I did this, taking me around to go work and stuff like that, making sure that I was constantly with her. I know Carl talks about it all the time as far as like, man, you always with your mama. And I think at that time frame, like it was during the time I was in depression, but I think also the time I just came
Carl
out of it.
is your friend. We should say
Carl
that.
was my best friend. And so it was also, I think, the time after I came out of it too, that I was kind of like an appreciation for what my mother had done. So I spent a lot of time with her to make sure like things that she needed to be taken care of. I was very much like being the mama's boy to take care of my mother as she took care of me during the time frame. And so
I'm sorry I interrupted. No, I think I interrupted you, and then we went off on a tangent. So you're
you're good. Yeah, she didn't leave me alone. And so also the parallel, God took Elijah to the cave and had a moment where he spoke to him. God allowed me to be at the outside the trap house, and he spoke to me. And that was the moment where I began to see and want to live again. And that was the moment where God woke up Elijah to start living again. Because Elijah went from there, because Elijah realized he wasn't the last one there, because there were other prophets God had set aside in Israel. He also had already set aside a successor for him in Elijah. Is that right?
Elisha or Elisha. I
was getting confused.
People say
Elijah and Elisha. Yeah, Elisha.
Elisha or Elisha.
His successor. And so God gave him purpose and meaning and a reason to live again.
Oof,
and so God did the same thing for me, because he spoke to me then. He allowed me to see where the path I was going to lead to my death if I kept allowing myself to be in these situations. But he also gave me purpose and reason to live again, because he connected me with Carl created the youth group, the Elite, at that time, which was
your friend Carl.
Yeah, my friend Carl. A group of young people. This is before we did Christ Epidemic. A group of young people who were on fire for God and really digging deep. And so, like, being in that environment where, like, hard worship, like deep, like on fire worship for God.
Young people on fire for God.
My age, really getting into it, really digging into the Word, really trying to understand. I think that was huge for me, because I realized like I wasn't alone in the struggle. Like there were other people around me who were dealing with similar issues or struggles, and they were looking to dig deeper into God, for Him to be able to be that support and that foundation that we could rely on to strengthen us in the midst of that. So I think it was huge. There's people who dealt with depression like I did, people who dealt with suicide, people who dealt with rape and different things like that. And so for me to kind of be in that environment with people who were just as traumatized as I was, but to be seeking after God was huge for me to understand. Like I had a purpose to live again, seek deeper after God, but also like to help other people in the same aspect, as far as like as I'm being healed, I can help other people be healed by God working through me. And so I think that was really huge. But I think really it was just God's grace to help me to make it through that, in the prayers of other people. Because I know my parents were really just there, and I know they talked to a lot of people as far as like trying to help me, because my cousin Brandon, they spoke to him to try to reach me because he's like my brother, and he wasn't able to reach me during that time. Carl tried to reach me during that time, and I just checked out. And I think our friendship almost deteriorated during that time frame, because I did not respond. I was unresponsive. And
even talking to him, because I remember he was when he was around, or when he was here, we were kind of talking about your period during depression.
My period
during depression. And your depression period? What do you want me to call it?
Sure, I was clinically depressed during that time.
Yes, he was. He was talking about how he would be asking you to go places, and you'd be like no, or turning him down. He didn't see you for like years, but in your story, the one thing I heard was that the people who cared about you were there. Like even if you weren't responding or you weren't saying anything to them, they didn't abandon you. Like they stayed around. I think even if they knew like, okay, this is a hard time for him, like this is what he's going through. They stayed present in your life. And I think that's just so key. Like, I think also that is a very representative of what Christ wants us to be. Yeah. Because you describing your story, God was present. He was there with you at the trap house. He was there with you during all of that stuff. Even when it was the lowest of lows, like God was there at the cave with Elijah. And that was his lowest moment. God is always present with us. So I just think it's amazing that your friends and family stuck through with you, even if they probably didn't know how to handle it and they didn't know what to say. They were just there. Yeah. Because that, I think, honestly, sometimes makes the entire difference between a person saying I don't want to live anymore and actually making themselves not live anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, not all the time, unfortunately, but I do think it can make a difference.
Right. And I think that's really huge. Because I think God can use many different outlets to try to reach you.
Yeah.
Like with Elijah, he used the angel to sustain him, and to bring him food and water. He spoke with a still small voice.
Mm-hmm.
He brought him to a place of, special importance to his people. He provided, purpose in the successor to train, and to understanding that there was others, that he wasn't alone. He provided community. And so I think that's really huge, because God did the same for me. He provided sustenance. He provided family, community. He provided purpose. He provided, I was blessed to hear his voice in that time frame. And so, and I mean, we all may not have that same experience. But I think the thing we ignore is that God is there in the midst of it. It's kind of like understanding. It's kind of like the book of Esther, where like God's voice wasn't heard throughout that whole book, but his providence and his provision and the means that he made to save the people from the work of Haman, and was all throughout the book. Like God provided providence for each step. And so it's kind of that same thing, I think, in everybody's lives. If we can take the moment to not call it coincidence, or call it luck, or to call it our own work or someone else's work, and it's God working through, give him credit where credit is due, and just be thankful. I think gratitude is huge. I think gratitude helped me too.
When did you start feeling the gratitude, though? Because I think when you're depressed, it's often hard to find that.
Well, I'm saying I don't think I felt grateful and realized I had a lot to be grateful for until the moment where I came home from the trap house. I think that was the beginning of the gratitude. I was like, and I realized, and then I saw the news thing about the dude being killed, the same situation. I was like, oh, thank you for saving me.
Yeah.
I think that was the first thought that came to mind. I was like, thank you, Lord, for saving me. Because the second thought that came to mind after that was me. Like, I'm absolutely sure that was me. And it felt right in my heart where I was just like, yep, that would have been you. Your parents have been watching the news and saw your face up there and be like, what was my son doing there? Like, he never came home, and now he's dead because of the situation. What happened?
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That's just a lot. I think that says a lot about how God is there with us in the highs and the lows. Because I think most people who of a certain age have probably been depressed at some point in their life. And maybe it wouldn't be diagnosed or defined as clinical depression.
And I wasn't.
Everybody goes through. I think everybody hits bottom at some point. It's just important to know that even though it may feel like God isn't there,
he's there.
He's there.
He's there. He is there. He's there every step of the moment. I think another good example, I think, would be David. Like, David went through it.
Yeah.
And he was depressed, and he, I think, had a moment of going insane from just the torment of being like, I was anointed to be king, the next king. I was actually in the house of the king. Now the king himself is trying to kill me. And like, I can't actually stay in the promised land of my people. Like, I'm being chased out. I have to live with the enemies of my people who want to actually kill me too. And I have no safe place to go to. I'm living in caves.
And that's the thing. David was being actually persecuted. Actually persecuted. Like, we can have it bad. There is persecution for some of us, but for most of us, no one is like chasing us down, attempting to kill us. Then you think about this man's life and the roller coaster of emotions that he must have been on, and through all of that, he was still able to let out a praise for God.
Yeah.
Literally one of the founders of our faith. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Jesus being known as the Son of David.
Yeah. I think that's really. I mean, Jesus
he suffered.
Yeah, I think in
Jesus too.
Yeah, and in the midst of that, the moment of the cross being a very heavy moment where a lot of people who were from the crowd saying that save yourself, may Elijah save you, may God save you, and who's gonna save you now? And so I don't know. It's really one of those things where it's just like, I don't want to say it's. God has gone through, he experienced what we have all experienced, so he can understand and be able to empathize and be with us in the midst of every moment like
Mhm.
that, because he's felt the same pain, he's felt the same betrayal, he's felt the same feeling of being alone and depressed and dying inside,
Mhm.
in pain, that we all have felt. And so I think that says a lot that we have a God that we serve who can understand us.
Yeah. Yeah. We don't have a savior who can't relate.
Mm.
Like Jesus is relatable. Can you imagine the angst and the heaviness that he must have felt before he got up on that cross?
Mm.
Knowing, even just before, like rewind back a little bit, like before they came to arrest him, like knowing that it was going to happen, it was coming.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, that was when he cried out. That's crazy. But yeah. Thank you for telling your story.
Oh, thank you.
I don't want to close you out if you're not ready, but
no, I was just gonna say I think Jesus possibly may even felt some form of depression in the midst of that too, because he
had to have been.
He definitely was like,
deeply disturbed.
take this cup from me.
He was deeply disturbed.
Yeah. So I think he was willing to submit to it. I think in a certain part of him definitely felt like, I gotta go through this.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think for me to relate to some of, I guess, that feeling, it's just like, I definitely felt, why am I going through this?
Well, look.
So, I mean, yeah.
God's getting the glory in your story.
Yes. And so, I mean, obviously, he allowed that door to be closed for the door with you to be opened.
Mm-hmm.
Because that door was not the door I'm supposed to go into.
You were not supposed to walk in that door.
He had set you aside for me, so I think that's a blessing.
Yeah.
I think I'm good there. Do you have anything you want to add to that? I mean, I think, obviously God wasn't done with me because he brought me to you. And I realized that my identity was in him alone, not in the people, not relationship or man's approval. And I think that was a big thing I struggled with for a long time. Like, I got to get approval from other people. Like, I feel good when other people approve myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had to realize how to grow out of that. And he was training me how to get out of that, because if your life and the things that you feel as accomplishments, or the things that you think is, if your emotions in your life is riding on the wave of people's approval, like, you're going to go through crazy up and downs. Because you can have moments where people love you, you can have moments where people hate you.
Yeah.
And I think it's kind of one of those things, like, you have to be able to trust in the foundation. God is the eternal rock. Jesus is the eternal rock. He's the foundation that we can place our home upon. That is always constant. And I think I had to learn that, and grow to that point. And I think he helped me to get there, and that was great. So that's all I got to say about that. I'm glad that you're here with me as I share the story.
Yeah.
We're going to get into her story next, not today, but next time. So
I just thought of something before we go about your story. Because I don't know if you maybe thought why, like if God was punishing you or not throughout that time, but I just thought about the fact that how he must have been training you. And sometimes, I think our pastor talked about it today, sometimes we can feel like when we're low, we can feel like God is punishing us, like God doesn't love us anymore, or God doesn't like us. Because, why would you put me through this? Why am I going through all this hurt and this torture? Because depression can be so heavy. And emotional and just hard. Like, it's why when people are depressed, they don't want to get out of bed. Like, you barely want to move or do anything because it's heavy. And I think people can feel like God is punishing me, like God doesn't love me, like, why is this happening to me? But it's always for his glory and for his good. And it really is like a teaching moment, I think, or even just a stretching. Because, you went through all you had to go through, but now you're here today, being able to tell your story, hopefully being able to give some type of insight or encouragement to someone else who might be going through the same thing.
Right. But I also want to add to that, because I think a lot of times we look at our situations in life and say, like, why are you doing this to me? I can honestly say God didn't do that to me.
You said you did it to yourself.
I did it to myself. I made, that's the one thing, you have to take accountability for yourself. I actively made a choice, and my friends told me, you're being stupid. I made a choice to have sex with this girl and say to myself, oh, it's going to save my relationship, I'm going to get married to her anyway, dumb stuff. And then get into a situation where I was ended up being abused. And it ended up in this whole situation where it led to my depression. Like, I made choices.
Do you think some of that depression came from you not being able to forgive yourself?
Possibly. I think possibly, yeah. But also, I think the thing about it was like, even though that I'm pretty sure that wasn't a road God would have liked for me to have taken,
Mm-hmm.
he was still there with me in the midst of it, and he worked it out for my good.
Come on, grace abounds.
Because there's lessons I have learned from the mistakes and the pain of that that's helped me to be a stronger person today. Could there have been a much more easier path I could have taken that would have been a whole lot more, better for me, where I wouldn't have to go through that pain? Absolutely. But I don't have the ability to know exactly what that was, nor can I go back and change that. And so all I can do is just accept my life is what it is, not regret the choices that I've made, and understand like, hey, the things you went through, yes, they were painful, but they help you to grow. Like,
God still uses it.
A sword is tempered in the fire. It's the crucible moments that you go through that help you to become more tempered and be a better person, right? Help you to become that champion, that guy that's calling out that overcomer, that he's pulling out the impurities. He was pulling out impurities in the midst of that. And so I think that was actually a huge thing. Because he definitely, I think that's one of those things. It's like I made a choice, but God allowed it. And I think God allowed it because it was going to pull out impurities that was going to allow me to become the husband that I was going to need to be for you. Because there were certain things that were beat out of me, both mentally, emotionally, and spiritually during that time frame, that allowed me to become who I am now for you. That I would not have been, and I probably would not have been a good fit for you if I did not become who I am. I think that says a lot. And I can be grateful because I have you. And I can be grateful because he kept me during that time. So I think that's a big thing. I don't want to extend this any further because I feel like we can go on. You know, we can go on for forever.
We could, but it was good stuff.
It was. It was.
We hope you guys enjoyed it too.
Most definitely.
We'll be back, and I'll be telling my story about mental health, my experiences.
We are doing a series.
Yeah.
And so, guys, obviously, if you want to contact us, we have an email, transparentwiththetownsends@gmail.com. Questions, concerns, you want to share your story, you want to connect with us. We also have a Facebook page. You guys can connect with us, guys, in our community we're trying to build. Obviously, guys. I
don't want you to say guys anymore.
Okay.
Anymore.
I realize that's a tick word that I use. If you have received value from this video, we would appreciate if you guys would subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on any new videos that we do. And make sure to go back and check out our other stuff too. Yeah.
See you later.
See you guys later.
Bye.